here we are. Welcome to our chat today. We're going to be talking about some things that have been happening recently. I've been chatting a lot with Graf. Graf is one of my main men, one of my main brochachos on the channel. And he and I are constantly in contact because we both love Ecuador. Obviously, Graf lives there. I don't, but he is. Here he is now. He is gonna inform us about some news, some kind of current news of what has been happening recently. So, you know, part of my channel and part of what I do is to keep people informed about what are good places to live abroad. And it's always good to be informed about not only what the best place is, but also some changes in places that you maybe are still good, but maybe they're going in a bad direction, or maybe, it's good to be informed about what's actually happening out there. And what better way to do that than by having our main man right here, Graffito, giving us the info.
You got to find a better main man.
So today we're going to be talking about Graf's news in Ecuador. So first, I want to preface this and by saying that I've already got a couple messages from people saying, well, oh man, all of Ecuador is terrible. It's all of Ecuador and it's so dangerous. And yeah, of course, the trend is not super positive, but also what we're going to be talking about today is not about all of Ecuador. Okay, this is going to be about a specific place. So we're going to go back to Graf here. And Graf, before we get into the recent events, can you describe what daily life in Cotacachi used to feel like when you first arrived?
Well, Eric, and thanks for joining everybody this evening. Nothing's really changed a whole lot as far as daily life. When we first arrived here, that was October 2024. We moved here from the coast. And, daily life was people going to work. We'd go to the gringo market on Thursdays. And, everybody had their routines. People smiling, talking. There was really no sense of any kind of issue or security issue at that time. And fast forwarding to, these past months, 4, 5, 6, 7 months or so, still daily life is very normal here. I don't want to alarm people or make it sound like people are holed up. Residents here are holed up in their homes, scared to go out. And that's not the case at all. My wife and I, Janet, we both, we walked into town this morning, to the gringo market like we do every Thursday. She walked back from Spanish lessons this afternoon. So, daily life is still very normal here and safe, overall. Of course, you got to be careful anywhere you are, but, don't go around flashing the gold jewelry and stuff. But things are still very normal here on the surface as far as daily life. So
okay. So just to give everyone a recap about where you are and how long you've been there, for people that don't know who you are, can you give us a bit more of the input about where you are specifically in Ecuador and how long you've been there for, and where you were before that?
Yep, sure. So my wife and I, we live here in Cotacachi. It's a small town, about 13,000 people. Population about 1,200 expats. We are approximately 2.5 hours north of Quito, the capital of the country, and elevation we're about 9,000 feet, 8 to 9,000 feet, depending on what part of town you're in. We moved here from a small fishing village on the coast called San Jacinto, which is north of Manta, one of the larger port cities on the coast, about an hour north of Manta. We've been here. Again, we moved here, I think it was October of 2024. And we live in a house just outside of town, about 1.5 miles from the center of Cotacachi. So we're kind of in the countryside here in El Campo.
Okay. And I'm going to actually pull up a map here just to.
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can get this going here. Let's see here. There we go. I'm going to put the website on here. Let's see if we can find it. That's the one. Okay. So for people that are not super familiar with Ecuador and where he's talking about, so he mentioned he is currently over here next to Otavalo. Otavalo is kind of north of Quito going towards Colombia in Cotacachi. Where is Cotacachi? Somewhere over here? Right, yeah. This
Yeah,
little
we're about
small
30
town.
minutes, about 30 minutes from Otavalo, and I guess South America's largest outdoor market. It's kind of their.
Right. And then you were living on the coast before this. And that's, I think, where a lot of people found your story was when you were talking about leaving San Jacinto,
Right.
which is on the coast, which has a bit more. Here's San Clemente, here's San Jacinto. So that's south here of San Clemente. And some people ask about Bahia de Caracas. That's over here north of that. So he was living over here in on the Pacific coast. And part of the reason, Graf, from our chats, part of the reason that you mentioned that you were leaving was because you kind of, your board was part of it, but also it seemed like the crime situation was unsettling. Is that right?
Oh, there were certainly issues with crime, especially in Manta, some issues north in Bahia de Caracas. Our little villages actually were very safe. We felt safer there than we do in Cotacachi right now, actually, believe it or not. So it's, like I've previously mentioned in some of our interviews, there's some hot spots of, along the coast, some bad areas. We were in a good area. Our primary reason for relocating was we just wanted more to do. We wanted, more activities, outdoor activities, parks, festivals, markets. Proximity to Quito is a big plus, with the international airport. So that was the driving reason for the relocation. Living on the coast and hearing about a lot of the cartel activity, especially in Manta, an hour to the south of us, that was concerning, as it should be, but it never really spilled over into, the villages where we lived there, San Jacinto, San Clemente. So.
Okay, yeah. So, I'm still trying to get all those facts together correctly. But yeah, right. You said that you didn't really have much issue, but that was like the part of the part of Ecuador that was receiving most of the bad criticism was on the coast, but it wasn't really
For sure.
an issue for you in San Jacinto.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
But now you're in Cotacachi. Okay. And this is most of this chat for everyone watching. Most of this chat is going to be specifically about Cotacachi, where Graf is now. So I wasn't trying to overgeneralize that all of Ecuador is having the same issues. I'm sure it is a current issue that is getting perhaps going on a worse trend now. But I think specifically where Graf is now, that's an issue that we mostly wanted to talk about and just bring to light and have a conversation with anyone that's either living there or that is thinking about going there. So what exactly has been happening in Cotacachi recently, Graf?
So I would say within the past year at the most. Again, when we first moved here, there weren't really any issues. But within the past year, maybe 10 months or so, there's been an uptick in home invasions, thefts, while people are home, but also just, break-ins into empty homes, bodegas and casitas. We had a break-in last fall here at our place. They stole our mountain bikes, a chainsaw, some other stuff. So there's just been a pretty substantial uptick in crime in general that seems to be mostly directed at expats, unfortunately.
Okay. And so are these isolated incidents or does it feel like it's a pattern? Because you've been saying that it's been like almost one a month. Is that what you mentioned last time?
Oh, weekly almost, I would say,
Weekly.
just about. Um, I would say it's more of a pattern. Yeah, definitely. Just earlier this week, I think it was Monday, a lady that lives on the other side of town, again, kind of on the outskirts of town, caught somebody climbing over their fence into their yard. Um, I don't know the specifics of that, but somehow the person changed the crook changed their mind and hightailed it back out over the fence. Uh, and I believe that, if I recall, the owner of that property heard a drone, flying over above. So, you know, they're getting into some of this technology to scout some of these places out, um, which is concerning too. Quite a bit.
Yeah. Doesn't
Yeah.
make you feel safe when someone's
No,
kind
no.
of peering over like the top of your house
Yeah,
or like looking in. Like that's not a
right.
good
You
feeling.
hear a drone flying over. That's probably not a good thing because these are just, regular homes. There's nothing of touristic value or anything like that for somebody, to gain a drone video from. So it's in all likelihood, surveillance from somebody scouting out your place. So
So, have you heard of this happening equally affecting locals as much as expats?
have not. And we, my wife and I, we interact with a good bit of, locals here, Ecuadorians, indigenous, we're out in an indigenous community. Um, so we haven't heard of near as many incidents. Now, of course, I can't speak for everybody, all the locals in the community here. I'm sure there have been some incidents, targeting, Ecuadorians here, but, those don't always make the news in expat circles and social media like an expat's home being broken into or, a home invasion, situation. So I'm sure there are incidents out there, but I have not heard of many at all.
Hmm. And Graf, tell us what kind of homes are being targeted. Are there like gated communities involved in this? Are they like the standalone houses by themselves, like rental apartments? Can you give us a bit more information about that?
Yeah, sure. So it seems to be the pattern seems to be they're targeting homes inside some of these gated communities, some of these conjuntos that are scattered throughout Cotacachi here, and those are primarily inhabited by expats. Um, our conjunto out here, our gated community out here. I think we have out of 15 homes in here. We have 3 Ecuadorian families. The rest are all owned by expats, rented or outright, purchased. And we had actually one of the Ecuadorians. He lives in Quito, nice fella. His home was broken into about 2 weeks ago, and he wasn't home at the time, thankfully, but they got away with quite a bit of stuff from his home. So um, that is an example of an Ecuadorian being targeted, inside a conjunto here. But my guess is the people that broke into his house probably didn't know he was Ecuadorian. They just see a nice big fancy house and an opportunity and took it, unfortunately. So.
Hmm. And for everyone that's joining us, hello, welcome. And if you have any questions, you can write into the comment section and ask Graf any specific questions about any things you might be wondering. Okay, so just go ahead and let us
Yeah.
know if you have any questions for Graf as we go through this, as we talk about this topic here, and kind of give you guys the inside scoop about some modern issues happening. So, Graf,
Yeah.
what are people saying on the ground, and what's actually being reported? Is it actually like is there are there reports being made? Like, have the police been called?
Yeah. So again, I think this conversation, this interview we're having here is going to focus on, primarily the expats being targeted and being victimized with some of these crimes. So, on the ground, there's a good bit of chatter, with these concerns and these incidents, which is natural. Um, I think people are worried. They're concerned. Police have been involved. with a lot of, I would say most of these, especially the home invasions where expats have been home and victimized. So the police are doing what they can. Um, and I'm all for law enforcement wherever it is in the world, but they can only do so much, unfortunately. And one of the biggest issues right now involving the police here is the response time and lack of a timely response time. Um, it's 30, 40 minutes for them to respond to an incident, and that's in a small town like this. A lot of the expats, myself included, my wife included, feel that's just very unacceptable. I mean, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I can be in Otavalo, on the other side of the Pan American. So they've got to be able to do better on the response time. Granted, most break-ins when there's an event, the bad guys are in and out, in 5 minutes. So even if the police had a stellar response time, the odds of them arriving on site where there's an event happening are very, very low. So you got to keep that in mind. The odds, the odds is, them catching somebody in the act, breaking into a house, a bodega, whatever it is, are very slim. So that has to be kept in mind by people. But still, after the event, break-in, whatever it is passed, for the police to take 30 to 40 minutes to arrive at the scene, again, is very unacceptable. Kind of a non-crime related, but emergency response related quick story. Last fall, we had a fire just outside our gated community here, down in one of the valleys here, right next to us. Flames, huge fire. We called the fire department. They couldn't find us. One of the neighbors had to leave the gated community, drive into town, find the fire truck, and lead them back to us. So that similar kind of mindset can be applied to, an ambulance, to a police response. A lot of them just don't know how to get to some of these communities that are on the outside of town like we are. So often a little bit of a tangent there, but it's part of the bigger picture of police response. And they're trying. I think they have good intentions, but I think they can do better at the same time. So.
Mm-hmm. And Graf, for people that are joining and for you to give us a more clear understanding of the actual quantity of the break-ins, what number are we talking about? Because you've said that it's been happening fairly regularly recently. So what is the number more or less that you have been hearing has been happening?
Well, so I kind of have two classifications of crimes, that are happening here directed towards expats. You have home invasions, which typically the owners of the home are home, and they're subdued in some fashion. There's been about a half dozen of those within the past year. And then you have just, it's not the right word, but, just the regular break-ins to casitas, into a vacant house, like what happened to our neighbor a couple of weeks ago. So you have those types of crimes, and those are, there's been an uptick in those. I would say, not quite weekly, maybe one every couple of weeks. So, and like there was an attempted one, like I described earlier, an attempted one just last week. Somebody climbed a wall, and but they ran off for whatever reasons. So there's definitely, since we moved here, been an uptick in crime in general. A concerning uptick, not just kind of here and there. It's becoming a pattern, unfortunately.
So let's compare that to your experience when you first moved to Cotacachi, because you've been there for a few years now, and it didn't seem like that was an issue when you first arrived, right?
Not at all. And we did a good bit of research prior to moving here. Made several trips, exploratory trips here from the coast, and the issue of crime never came up. We spoke with expats. We were on all the Facebook pages, all the usual stuff. That was never really an issue for anybody, and we never heard of any kind of home invasion. When we were looking at moving here, and for the first, I would say, 4 or 5 months, really nothing. Something changed. There's definitely, I'm using that word too much, an uptick in these incidents. We've talked to some other expats that have lived here, for quite a long time, 10 plus years. And they say, this has happened in the past, and it comes in waves. You'll have, 10 months of, pretty, intense break-ins and whatnot, and then it tapers off and things are, pretty tranquilo for a couple years. So what we're not sure of right now is if we're in one of those upticks in this, longer term pattern of crime. But nonetheless, it's very concerning, for everybody here. Not just my wife and I, but for all expats.
So, Graf, how has this changed how safe you feel there, and just how safe you think you are now that things are kind of changing and going on a negative trajectory?
Right, and I agree with that what you said. It is definitely not going in a good direction right now. We're especially at nighttime, because that's when all of these crimes have happened is at night. At night, I don't sleep real sound anymore, to be honest. You hear a little creak, you hear something outside. I have goats and sheep. I hear one of the sheep, baa or something. I'm up and I'm out on the terrace, and I'm out there with a flashlight. Okay, what's out there? What's going on? So, the nights are not as sound asleep as like, what I had at the beach. Because, again, these crimes are happening during the night, usually between midnight and, 4 a.m. or so. And, you just kind of sleep on edge, and that's so I do, I definitely feel, and I think my wife would agree with me, less safe. But at nighttime, during the day, again, during the day is not an issue. We have no problems walking to town, going and, doing our normal activities. It's mainly nighttime, because that's when everything's happening. So,
Are you worried about your sheeps and your goats, or I can't remember exactly what farm animals you have? And for everyone that's joining and doesn't know much about the update, Graf has become a small-time farmer in the mountains in
hobby
Ecuador.
farmer. So I have my own petting zoos. What I joke with people, as a little kid, I always liked petting zoos, and so now I've got my own petting zoo. So
Are you worried about your animals being stolen? Has that been an issue for anyone you know of?
no, that's typically more of an issue with some of the indigenous farmers, out in the countryside, livestock theft and whatnot. Not often, because of their indigenous justice system, but here with my animals.
What is the indigenous justice system? What does that mean?
So yeah, you don't want to mess around with that. If you're caught stealing, say, a cow from somebody, or even a goat or sheep, and the indigenous catch you, each little indigenous community has, a leader, like a mayor. They have their own set of rules. But if they catch you, depending on the type of theft, they're going to punish you publicly. A neighbor of ours on the other side of town, I should say a friend more than a neighbor, was telling me yesterday, someone stole a cow. This was in the La Calera sector of Cotacachi. Someone stole a cow a couple months ago. They caught the guy. They caught the driver assisting the person stealing the cow. They burned the owner, the truck down. They burned the guy's truck, and then paraded the guy that actually stole the cow with the assistance of the truck. They paraded him only in his underwear. I think she said he was allowed to wear socks, but they paraded him into town carrying a big bag of, I think it was feed or something, on his back.
Wearing only socks.
Only socks and underwear.
Oh, underwear too. Okay.
a lot of times they don't even give them underwear. I've read, seen in the news, farther south of us, down towards south of Quito, some of the indigenous communities out there. There was a story about a year ago. Someone murdered another person. They caught him and they hung him. There was a public hanging. I think they might have even burned them. So you don't want to mess with the indigenous justice system. You don't want to be caught up in that because they mean business. And that's probably why there isn't a lot of crime directed towards the Ecuadorians and especially the indigenous out in some of these outer communities around Cotacachi and not just Cotacachi, but pretty much anywhere in the Sierra. So um, getting off on a little tangent there, but I wish we could do some indigenous justice, but you got to catch the guy first.
Uh,
So
do you think the fact that you're in like a majority type of indigenous area, it's mostly indigenous where you are, from what I understand. Do you think that has
yes,
any effect on how criminals look at foreigners since like they aren't part of the indigenous community?
well. I don't think, and again, this is strictly my opinion. I don't think the people, and again, strictly my opinion, but I think whoever's doing all of these home invasions and break-ins, I think it's a gang, small localized base gang, maybe someone at Otavalo or even Ibarra to the north half hour. Um, I don't think they're indigenous, and I think they see these gated communities where all these expats lives as targets and fairly easy targets. They don't want to mess with the indigenous houses. One, because they're probably not. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. They're not going to get a lot of valuable items out of there. They're not going to get the big screen TVs and all the stuff that they can sell and pawn off real quick for whatever reason. Plus, even bigger than that, um, they don't want to be caught by the indigenous because they know what'll happen.
Right. I think that was more of my question is perhaps
So,
the fact that that there is a more intense judicial system with
yeah,
locals that perhaps they feel like when they attack foreigners, the consequences aren't as high. That was kind of my idea.
yeah, definitely. We're targets, and for one, and kind of easy targets, I'm afraid, in a lot of cases. And they know that if they're caught, it's not going to be by the indigenous leaders of whatever community they're committing the crime in. It's going to be by the police, and so they don't have to worry about being hung or paraded through town in their underwear or whatnot. So yeah,
Okay, and for everyone that's just joining us, Graf, we have about 27 to 30 people that are on now. Thanks for joining us. We're just chatting about
well,
the current
thank you.
situation in Cotacachi, specifically where Graf is living now. Okay, and Graf, how are the expats reacting to the situation?
Well, it's kind of been a wake up call for everybody. It's because it's happening more often. It's happening to expats. Some incidents more serious, quite a bit more serious than others. So I think people are starting to realize this isn't the tranquil little paradise that's immune to everything else. We're going through a rough spot here. Um, we need to kind of prepare accordingly. We need to just be more aware of the reality of what's changing here in town. So I think, of course, I can't speak for everybody. This is just kind of me extrapolating from conversations and social media stuff. But I think that's, people are starting to kind of open their eyes and realize that, okay, we need to be better prepared and take precautions against some of these situations.
Gotcha. Graf, let's take a minute to look at some of the comments from the people that are on our
Sure.
chat, and I'm gonna read a couple to you. So we have MKOS Chara. I'm sorry this is happening to you. My wife and I are in Costa Rica, and crime has gone up too. Yeah, I've been watching and following the news. Not so much the news, but like more the expat groups on Facebook, and I've been reading that. Also, I have always um, I was there a couple years ago as I was driving through Central America, and yeah, Costa Rica was once like considered super super safe, and it seems like maybe it's a trend in higher like or more expat hub type of areas is that maybe there's a bit of animosity going on between the locals and the foreigners, and yeah, I've been hearing about Costa Rica and that happening. So that's it's what part of Costa Rica are you living in? I'm Coast Chara. That's our first comment. And then we have Sally G. The stark reality is that Ecuador, which is the same size as the state of Nevada, had 9,216 homicides in 2025. Nevada had 199. Fortunately, there is still a very low homicide level throughout Imbabura. I have a feeling Sally
Yeah,
either lives there or knows a lot about Imbabura or Ecuador.
yeah. Well, the homicide rate here in Imbabura, I think it's still fairly low. Uh, on the other side of that, you can't compare anything in the States to here, in my opinion. Especially when it comes to statistics. They can skew those numbers to fit whatever agenda, whatnot. Yeah, there's a serious homicide problem in Ecuador right now. It's very high, probably, uh, higher than it's probably, if I were to guess, in the top five, high homicide rates in the world right now. But what I still have never seen a statistic when I see these numbers that differentiate cartel on cartel homicides from just regular citizens. I don't see that regular people, regular law-abiding citizens are going out killing each other. I'm gonna guess that the bulk of that 9,216 homicide number that she posted, that's cartel on cartel type of violence. So, which it still counts as a homicide. It's not right, but people need to be aware that these aren't these are criminals killing criminals, basically, to they kind of be blunt about it. Yeah, I'm sure there's innocent people mixed into that number, unfortunately, which is tragic. But it's that homicide rate number here in Ecuador. I think you're going to find that most of that is cartel on cartel violence.
I was just told, everyone, know. Oh, I'm turning my microphone up louder, louder. Please let me know if my microphone is okay for you guys to hear, or if I am just turning up my audio. Let's see here. Sorry, let me try and turn up. I've been told by David that my my audio is low. So guys, let me know if that's
Okay.
if you guys are not hearing me well. Microphone. What is the name of this microphone? I don't know. I forgot that I have to turn up in a specific program. I have to turn up the volume there because it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't turn up for whatever.
We got a mic is good now.
Okay, everyone, let me know.
Maybe a little bit too loud, they're saying.
now too loud. Okay, give me a second here. Much better, but a little more. Maybe a bit louder. Okay. I'm turning it up now. Louder, please. Okay. I'm going to put it up all the way up to here. I get it at 95 out of 100. Is this okay now, everyone? Yeah, sorry about that. I totally forget that that this program is the only thing that allows me to actually change it for you guys, as what I'm hearing seems to be fine, but it's not the right one. Sounds good. Okay, thanks, Sally. Okay, so sorry about that, guys. That was my bad. I always get the technical difficulty since I am not very tech savvy, to be honest. Okay, so yeah, sorry. Getting back to the chat and getting back to our our comments. Okay, Graph. We have M. Koschara. She said, "I'm in San Jose." So I actually spent 6 weeks in the San Jose. You said you're in a suburb. I spent 6 weeks in Heredia for my time as I was going through Central America in Costa Rica. I felt it was very laid back, it was very chill. I had my motorcycle, so I was like able to go far away from the big, downtown kind of. It was a little bit big, grimy, a bit more, a bit less safe feel than you'd have on the suburbs. So yeah, what part of the suburbs are you living in? Because I went to some parts of San Jose, but I didn't make it to, it's a huge city, so I didn't make it to a lot of the places. David said mic volume is very low. Thank you for letting me know, David. I always forget to turn it up on the other program I have. M. Koschara, where I live, we have private security. It's probably useful. So Graf, let's actually talk about that in your case because you, in fact, have
Okay.
private security, right?
No, we do
Okay.
not. No, we do
What do
not.
you have?
One of the other, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What do you have? Like, what kind of security measures do you have where you're living?
So in our gated community, it's all walled in, of course, about 10-foot walls, which unfortunately haven't deterred some of these robbers. But we have a community siren, which was just installed about 3 weeks ago. And each household has a little remote, little clicker that if something's happening, there's an event, someone, break in, whatever's happening, they can set that alarm off, hit the clicker and the sirens go off, out on the street in the gated community here. Um, Thankfully, it hasn't been tested yet. The idea behind it, and I'm not in a lot of agreement with it, but the idea behind it is the siren goes off and the residents go into the street, and I'm not sure what, hopefully maybe confront the robbers. Uh, it's a little, it's not a very good system in place, in my opinion. I think, especially the coming out into the street, all the residents coming out into the street to possibly confront possibly armed criminals, more than one maybe. I think that could lead to safety issues, obviously, for the residents here. The hope is also that the robbers breaking in, they hear the siren, and that deters them, and they turn around and leave without finishing the job. Not sure if that'll be effective or not. The way things are going, I'm sure it'll be tried out at some point in time. That's just the pattern right now, unfortunately. But I'm not in agreement with that system that they have set up. But we have the clicker, and something happens. Oh, I'll click it, and whatever. We'll see what happens. As far as other security measures, that's really the only one that's community-wide here in our gated community. Each resident is kind of taking security measures into their own hands and deciding what's best for them, on an individual household basis.
So, can you go into a bit more of the specifics about what you and Janet have available, if you don't mind talking about that part?
We have things in place. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because what we have in place, I don't want other people to know, and that's part of the effectiveness of our system is they don't know what we have.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there have been incidents and talk of there's security installation companies are a big thing right now. They're probably making a lot of money. There's been rumors, just rumors that they tell the bad guys, they sell information. Okay, this house over here in this conjunto, this is their weak spot. This is the blind spot with their cameras. That type of thing. So I will say we do have cameras. We have our dogs inside the house, which they'll bark and alert us to things. But we have other measures implemented as well.
Graf, are there certain neighborhoods that are being affected more heavily than others, or do you think it's kind of like a town-wide type of problem that's happening in Cotacachi now?
It's town-wide. There's about, probably about five or six major gated communities, kind of all on the outskirts of Cotacachi. All primarily expat residents, and those seem to be the big targets right now.
Okay. Do you feel like, Graf? Do you feel like that that expats are making any type of mistakes, or they're not properly keeping their areas safe from this type of situation, or or do you think maybe they're not responding appropriately and keeping their stuff safe, or they're underreacting to the situation? What do you feel on that?
I feel probably up till a couple months ago, um, they were just not overly concerned about break-ins and whatnot. And within the past couple months, I think people are taking the situation a little more seriously, reevaluating security needs on their homes, um, rethinking things like, okay, who am I letting onto my property? Who am I letting into my house? Um, there's also been accounts where workers come into a gated community and it's suspected that they have sold information to the robbers saying, okay, such and such house here, house number 5 or whatever, it's empty or it doesn't have very strong security. So again, that can't be proven, but there's a lot of talk of those types of situations. And certainly if you can avoid having somebody you don't know, a worker, a trusted worker, if you can avoid having somebody come onto your property, into your house, that's just another layer of preventative measure because you don't know that person. They could be scoping out your property. Okay, in the back, they got a short wall. They don't have electric fencing above their wall. They don't have protection on their window. Those types of things. So I think the expats in general here in town are taking those types of things into consideration a lot more seriously these past 2 months.
Okay. So, Graf, let's go ahead and get into some of these comments that we have from the community. We have Sally saying, I have been to Cotacachi twice. I love it there. Ecuador presently has a higher level than Haiti. Higher level of violence is what you're mentioning, Sally? Yeah, that would probably be correct, just being that, Ecuador has the issue with the narco terrorism, right?
Yes. Yeah.
MKOS Chara, and we are behind a lot of wrought iron. I'm not sure what that means. Do you know what that means?
Probably. It's probably a security measure. Wrought iron fences, maybe wrought iron grates over their windows. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Pretty typical.
She said,
in Latin America.
she or he says, but our neighborhoods feel safe enough to go for walks every day. Okay, that's good.
And we feel the same here. Again, we were out. I think we racked up 4 or 5 miles walking today. Into town and all around, doing our normal stuff. It's mainly at nighttime where that kind of uneasiness settles in. So
yeah, right. Okay, so we have Mokushara again. I like the work you did in Bolivia. Thank you, appreciate it. Got a couple more videos coming out for Bolivia. I'm currently in Argentina, so I'll be going back to Bolivia. If you guys really like the videos in Bolivia, let me know. Give me some tips of people to meet if you know any expats there or you have contacts, so I can arrange more interviews for my time there. Here we have Mokushara. I found those videos really interesting. I remember. It is chill. Moravia, near the mall, Lincoln Plaza. Our neighbors chip in with us for the cost of security. Oh, okay. So you have, is that where you're staying in Moravia? That's in San Jose, right? Moravia. I'm not sure exactly where that was. I might have gone once. Lincoln Plaza. I think I went to Lincoln Plaza, actually. I used to go around the city looking for my gym. I would go to my gym in like many different parts of the city and check out the different parts and go eat and check out the malls and stuff. Yeah. So you all chip in Mokuchara. So how much does your security measures? How much do you guys put into that? I'm curious. Mokuchara for the cost of security. Sally, LOL. Sally, be wise, Graf. Be wise. Clip Terminator didn't go to Caribbean coast. I'm not sure what are you referring to here? Clip Terminator. Robert Ace, hello all. Makuschara. Hello, yep. Hello, Robert. Sorry, I'm getting lost here. Seems like we got a lot more comments. Yeah, then we're kind of falling behind here. So Here we got. Hello all, Marcos Chara. How did your guest end up picking Ecuador? Let's go ahead and get into that story. Graf, go ahead, tell everyone how you ended up picking Ecuador. I'm going to grab some vino.
Well, condensed version, I guess. My family is actually from Ecuador. My grandfather was born in Manta. And there's generations and generations of a family, primarily in Manta and Guayaquil. So, as a little kid, I always heard the stories about my grandfather's travels to Ecuador and whatnot, and it intrigued me, and but never had the opportunity as a kid to visit. Although my father did, so I heard stories from my dad too. So fast forward to I think it was 2011, my 40th birthday. As a gift, my father and I came to Ecuador. My first trip here, and we spent time in Quito. We spent time in Manta, Yampe, to the south of Manta. And I fell in love with the country. Absolutely amazing. It was just, an eye-opening experience on many different levels. And from that first trip, I told myself someday, I'm going to have a beach house here. I'm going to retire here, and just live the rest of my days in Ecuador. So that was 2011. Fast forward again to December 2018. I bought my first beach house in San Jacinto, north of Manta there. And at the time, a purchase, my wife and we were living in Kansas City, both still working. She had a career. I had a business I was running. And retirement was, 10 to 15 years away for us still. So the beach house was a vacation home. And we came down 2 to 3 times a year for a couple of weeks each time. Then in, I think it was early 2021, I had the opportunity to sell my business and retire early. And so we sold everything we owned and moved to our house on the beach. So that's, to answer the question shortly, family is kind of what opened my eyes up to Ecuador. If I didn't have that family connection, I probably wouldn't have come here. But family isn't necessarily what made me want to retire here. That's just kind of what brought me here on my first visit, because I heard the stories, that kind of thing. I just fell in love with the country after that first trip, and decided that's where I want to go. And 2016, back up a little bit. My wife made her first trip to Ecuador with me, and she felt the same way I did. So, good to have your partner, wife on board with a big decision like that. So, and we still love it here. Granted, there's some issues here right now in Cotacachi and on a bigger level, countrywide. But we do still love Ecuador. It's an amazing country. So. I
wanted to mention Graf for everyone that doesn't know Graf's story very well. We have quite a few videos on. This is the Ecuador playlist. Okay, so there's a playlist with all of the Ecuador videos, and if you don't know Graf's, his situation on the coast, this is the video here while we're leaving our dream retirement. We had a couple of videos, like follow-up videos, answering some questions. We talked about them moving to, this is a Cotacachi specific video here. So for anyone that doesn't really know much about Graf's background and you want to see a bit more in-depth information, here's another video, Retiring in Ecuador is Not What You Think. We did quite a few videos. We answered a lot of questions. So if you guys have any other questions that we didn't answer, just let us know. Okay. So let's go back to the community here, Graf. We got a lot of comments. I think we're falling behind.
Looks like one from Sally G about the cameras, the newly installed street cameras around town.
Go ahead.
Are they helping? Well, last I heard, they didn't even have people monitoring the cameras 24/7 yet. I hope that's changed. I think I heard that 2-3 weeks ago. I hope that's changed, but a lot has to happen from a surveillance standpoint and a police response standpoint to make those cameras effective. You have to have somebody, sitting, monitoring those cameras 24/7. They see somebody doing, a bad deed on the camera. They have to contact the police. We kind of have an issue with response time here right now. So my opinion is I don't think they're going to be very effective. Um, I just, again, a lot has to happen to make them effective. I don't think they're effective in the States, or I just don't think they're a very big deterrent in general, and not just Ecuador, not just Cotacachi, but, globally. It's just so many things have to happen for them to be an effective piece of equipment, hardware to deter anybody. And I feel the robbers, yeah, they're doing some bad stuff, but they're not all dummies. They know this stuff too. Oh yeah, there's a camera up there. Yeah, they see me stealing this car. Yeah, I know it's going to take the police, 15, 20 minutes to get here. I'm gone in 5. So they know these things, and they scope things out, surveillance, of their own, of course. So I don't think the cameras are effective. I think those the money, the resources spent on installing all those cameras throughout town could have been much better spent. I heard last week the police here have only 2 functioning squad cars, police cars. They could have spent that money for the cameras on more squad cars, more police cars. But again, that's my opinion. Take that for what it's worth.
So to add on,
but a good question. I appreciate the question, Sally.
So Graf, to add on to your point, I have a story that happened in Mexico. So it's not the same country, but it deals with the same idea, which is I was in Durango, right? I was in the mountains, the high mountains desert, and I was there before I started this project. And I was on the bike that I have now, on the motorcycle La Princesa, and I ended up asking some locals if leaving my bike on a certain street that seemed to be safer than normal, or a safe-ish street would be okay. And the local said, yes, this is the safest part. Got the street lights, you got all the stuff. So long story short, I left it there because I had made a bad decision and I was not unable to drive home. Let's just put it that way. and I went home on an Uber, doing the responsible thing. And then when I came back to my bike, it had been broken into. So the criminal, I had 2 helmets tied to it. Luckily, I had chained my bike to a tree, because when I came back to my bike to get it the next morning, they had broken into my bike. So my bike has what's called a front trunk. And inside there, I had a bunch of expensive cologne. I had some shirts. This is back when I was single and I was probably going on a date or something. I had some extra clothes. I had, I had even some documents in there and some expensive helmets and all these accessories for my bike. So I came back, all of it was gone. And the guy broke into my bike in a way that they broke some of the locks. So with a crowbar. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much damage to this bike. They twisted open apart. It looked just messed up. And then I went around to the local businesses. I said, hey, what happened to this bike? My bike just got destroyed and I lost a bunch of stuff. And I went to the business on the corner where my bike was. And I'm like, hey, do you have security cameras? They said, yeah, we have security cameras. I'm like, were they recording? And they checked it out. They said, yes. And I'm like, can you send them to me? They're like, yes. And they sent them to me, right? So I thought, okay, maybe with this, maybe I can get some of my stuff back, right? Or maybe the police can help me, whatever. So I go I take the video. I do a police report with the police there. And I show them, this is the guy. And the worst part of the story is that the guy that I asked if it was safe was the guy that robbed me. And
jeez.
yeah, so imagine that, right?
Bastard.
So a guy came back. He was definitely part of the mafiosos. He's part of the group of the mafia, and he ended up taking all that stuff and I turned in the evidence to the police. I actually went to what's called the flea market, the Mercado Plaga, and I went there. I found one of the two helmets that he stole, and I got
Oh,
the card of the guy that sold it to me. Because I was like, okay, now I have a connection
right.
of who bought my stolen stuff, and I have a video showing the guy trying to steal my bike and then breaking into it and taking my stuff.
Mhm.
I brought it to the police, and I waited for I was there for like another 3 weeks, and they did absolutely nothing. And
Yeah.
I think for a reason, like there's probably
Sure.
something going on there. So I think to go back to his point is that even if there's cameras, even if the cameras record everything, how much can you get
Right.
done with it, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. Uh, Eric, real quick, I need a quick break for a
Yeah, go
minute.
ahead.
Can I
Go,
step right
go do your
back?
thing.
Okay, be right back. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna look at a couple more comments while Graph is gone. And by the way, before since Graph is doing his thing, I'm gonna show you guys. I'm really kind of a wine nut, and I'm in Argentina right now. So like wine here, it's this wine country, and I wanted to show you the wine that I'm drinking tonight. So this is Malbec, right? We're in Malbec land, Malbec country. Uh, Tras Amor, like through love. You can find quite decent bottles of Malbec, of red Tinto, in specifically Argentina. I was just in Uruguay, and it was about double the price, which was still pretty cheap. But like bottles like these, like really good wines, are $3, $2, $3, $4. Like there's some as cheap as $1. So it's for people that like wine. I just wanted to point that out while Graph is gone. Unrelated thing, but I'm taking advantage of my love for vino while we have our chat today. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next comment. Robert Ace says, I'm most likely looking to be in the country by October or January 2027. 2027. Okay, so is that October 2026 and then January 2027 is what I'm guessing? Okay, yeah, so like near the end of the year and beginning of next year. I'm actually going to be driving down to Ushuaia in January next year. So, Robert, where are you coming from? Are you going to be retiring down in Ecuador? Here we have Ain. I recently heard that the situation in Vilcabamba is very serious. So we'll get back to Graph when he comes back about that question.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, so Graph, we have a comment from Ain. I recently heard that the situation in Vilcabamba is very serious. Do you have anything to add or to comment?
Well, full disclosure, I haven't been to Vilcabamba. I hear it's beautiful, though. I have seen online a few stories of some home invasions. I think directed towards expats that kind of lived out in the campo, out in the countryside a little bit, and other minor kind of petty theft stuff, pickpocketing and whatnot throughout town. And those things aren't, is my understanding, aren't typically normal for Vilcabamba either. So it seems they could be having an uptick in things that we're experiencing here in Cotacachi. So
Okay. Here we have Robert Ace. Just a simple, easy retirement and my electric e-bike.
yeah,
Electric e-bike. There you go. Are you driving it
yeah.
down from somewhere, or are you gonna buy one in Ecuador? What is your plan, Robert? Here we have Robert again saying they do that here in California too, and carjacking. Yeah. Actually, to be to go back to where I am now, I'm in Argentina, and I've been told that this city is particularly bad with motorcycle theft. I'm here on my motorcycle, right? So I have my bike in like a private parking, but yeah, that's definitely something I'm pretty concerned about. Graph, have you ever? I know you. For people that don't know, like you had an incident similar to this, right?
Well, I had somebody attempt to steal my truck when we lived on the coast. Um, the incident could have totally been prevented, by myself, but I was feeling lazy one night and I didn't park my truck at our secure parking spot. I parked it on the street in front of our house, and it was about 12:30 in the morning, 12:30 a.m. Neighbor's dog started barking crazy, and so I went out to our balcony and looked down at the street, and somebody's trying to break into it and steal it. And there was another his buddy's truck was parked about 20 feet in front of it, and so I own a firearm here in Ecuador legally, got a permit and everything. So I grabbed my gun out of my nightstand and went back to the balcony, and I didn't have my glasses on, I was blind as a bat, kind of. Not quite that bad, but I was in my pajamas and, middle of the night, and I yelled at the guy to, hey, stop it, get away. I gave him 3 verbal warnings. He kept trying, and so I fired 2 warning shots out over the ocean. Nowhere near him, but that was enough to do the trick, and he skedaddled pretty damn quick. And so that's, that was at the coast. And again, that was kind of foolish on my part because I was just lazy. I didn't park the car at my secure parking spot, and could totally have been prevented, but I was able to thwart the theft of the vehicle. So.
So it seems like we have our comment from Robert. Are you living in California, Robert? Is that where you're from? Here we have Sally saying of homicide. I'm not sure what she was talking about. Of homicide.
Okay.
Do you think? Oh, I think she was asking. Do you think the newly installed street cameras are helping for homicide? That maybe was what she's asking. I don't
know. Maybe you can expand on that comment a little bit for us.
Robert, I love your videos. Thanks, Robert. Thank you. Let me know of any places and people that you know of that I can share the story of as I go through the rest of South America. M. Koschara, steel fencing. Wow, steel.
Okay.
It keeps things safe, right? Sure. Over the windows and around the perimeter. Bolivia looks wild. By the way, Graf, have you been to Bolivia?
I have not, I'm afraid. There's always a list, I put it on the list.
Robert says $1,800 plus a month and $10,000 enough to start the retirement path. Will have documents and the apostille in the time frame. So, Robert, are you asking about like getting a certain visa, like a pensioner visa? Is that like what you're asking with the 10,000? Maybe we can go to Graf, talk about your monthly, your current monthly expenses, and tell Robert what you think about $1,800 a month, and at least in Cotacachi, maybe in Quito, and in San Jacinto.
I'd say, for $1,800 a month, you could live just about anywhere you want in this country, comfortably. Here in Cotacachi, for example, I'll throw some numbers out there. Our rent is $500. We have about a 1,500, 1,600 square foot home on about 1/4 of an acre, and in this little gated community here. Electric bills are $20 to $30, give or take. We use propane tanks here. So that's, when we need a refill on a propane tank, those are $3.25 each right now. And that's delivered to your home. They come by once a week here. Water, I think my last water bill was like $4 for the month, and we use a lot of water here between the animals and watering gardens and that kind of thing. Our high-speed internet is, what's that one? High-speed fiber optic internet. It's probably all high-speed now. Is I think about $22 a month. And our phone plans, cell phone plans, are about $25 a month. And then there's some long distance limitations on the calls for that, but we don't make many long distance calls. So that's utilities and expenses. Food, we spend about $300 a month on food, $250 to $300 for my wife and I. Roughly average about $1,000 a month for all of our expenses here: food, utilities, rent. I'm not factoring in food for my animals because I've got a lot of animals here, and
That's
that's
basically your
not
biggest expense now, isn't it?
well, put it this way: I wouldn't be able to afford all these animals if I were in the States. Vet bills and visits and feed and hay and alfalfa, et cetera, et cetera. So uh, definitely a perk of living here. I can have all these animals very inexpensively.
I think he's out also asking about the visa, but since you had citizenship through your family, right? So
Right.
different
Yeah,
situation for you.
that's a little one of our pets here. Um, Yeah, so I have dual citizenship because of our family that's here. My wife is she has a permanent residential visa now, but you can get an investor visa, you can get the pensioner visa. I think there's a nomad visa. Um, I think the investment visa is you need a $45,000 investment of some sort. That usually comes from the purchase of a house here for most expats. The pensioner visa, I'm honestly I'm not sure what the requirements are for that.
I'm pretty
Um,
sure
I
right
don't,
now, so in general in Latin America, the pensioner visa, retirement visa, whatever you want to call it, is 3 times the minimum salary. And the minimum salary, I think in Ecuador is 450 or 500,
yeah,
pretty close to 500.
yeah, 500. I think it's around 450,
Right.
445,
So
something like
it's going to be close to 1500 minimum for your social security income. So if you have above that, you can apply and get that visa easily.
that.
So that
Yeah,
I have some I'm gonna pull this up right here for anyone. So if you're interested in checking out graphs, an example of what his $500 home looks like, that is going to be found on one of the videos that's on this Ecuador playlist. I'm trying to find it right now. Oh, this one right here. This one right here, we talk specifically about Cotacachi. It's called Ecuador Retirement after 4 years. The surprises they don't warn you about, and that shows you exactly what kind of place that you can expect for that price. And then also, if you need any help and you don't have any contacts about doing the visa situation, the visa process, I have a contact here from Betsy who does work for Expat Law Group. So if you want to contact them, if you don't have any contacts yet, they do a good work as well. So let's go back to the chat here. Mokushchara, yes, it's by the mall. Yeah, you're talking about your place back in San Jose, right? Robert Ace. So Wi-Fi cameras and electrical fencing. Huh. Wi-Fi cameras and electrical fencing. He must be talking about
Hmm.
M. Koschara's situation, I guess. Here we have
today.
M. Koschara, $70 a month, 24 hours a day. We are 100 meters from the kiosk. Carlos, hey Carlos, Carlitos, my Peruvian friend. Hello, Eric, and hello to your guests. Hello, Carlos.
Join us, Carlos.
Carlos, thanks for showing up, saying hi. How are you doing? Oh, we are quite behind, huh? This is 9:07. We're 20 minutes behind.
Uh-oh.
Sweet. My wife is from Costa Rica. Oh, okay. So are you from the States, Makos Chara, and your wife is from there? Yeah, that makes sense. Robert says, e-bike conversions an option there. Can't bring my battery. Do you know what he's referring to over there?
Well, there are limitations of the size of lithium batteries you can take on an
Yeah.
airplane. My guess is, that's a pretty substantial battery on an e-bike. They're probably not allowing that to go on a plane. But Ecuador has a great selection of e-bikes. I mean, they may not be the exact brand you're looking for. Might be. I mean, everything seems like it's made in China anymore, but. Um, we see expats riding e-bikes all over the place here. So they are definitely available here in country. So that's an option. Seeing that you most likely can't bring the battery for your e-bike.
Mm-hmm. So M. Koschara says, I am a he and him. Sorry, I can't tell your gender on from your name, but yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah, so yeah, he, him. So now I understand you have a wife and you're a man. So sorry about that. Nice. Star. I am still working. Okay, you're working remotely. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Me too. I am so sorry that these things are happening. Yeah, it's pretty disappointing, when these things are negatively affecting, us as we after you make the huge decision to live somewhere else. It's kind of definitely something difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
This uptick in violence. I think I remember the coast videos. Yeah, so I think he's referring to the videos that we made when I was back in Ecuador. I actually am
Uh-huh.
thinking about going back to Ecuador. Who knows, after I finish Brazil next year. So we'll see. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. Maybe things were a bit loud. I'm not sure what he's exactly referring to
Yeah.
here.
Mm.
Um, Here we go. Sally 100. Gotta hop. It's always nice to hear from others living outside the U.S. Yep, same to you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for saying hi.
Thanks for commenting.
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
sharing your story
the
and giving
interaction.
questions. Dave says, is there anti-American sentiment currently due to the mass deportations in the U.S.? Go ahead.
Good question. And, I don't like to get into politics, but and I'm not, I haven't sensed any. If there is, and there's probably some out there, a lot of Ecuadorians have been deported, from the States back to here. Um, so I'm sure there's, a little bit of, anti-American sentiment, but if there is, it's not out in the public. Um, we haven't seen anything directed towards us, being Americans. I would say probably overall there isn't. Um, but with things like that, I'm sure there's a few people that have some pretty strong opinions about that.
Hmm. After we get through all of these comments, and I want to bring up another point about Ecuador that is kind of a big change for some locals. For locals that I think it's pretty big change and kind of unexpected situation, and also for expats, they're pretty mixed. There are mixed ideas about the safety and the American influence in Ecuador. We'll bring that up after we get through these questions and these comments.
Yeah.
Sally says, "Dang, 2 squad cars is woefully lacking."
Yes, it is.
I'm sure. I'm not really following. What does that mean?
Earlier in some of my dialogue, I was saying how they're in reference to the security lights that they installed in town here. I was saying how those financial resources could have been better spent
Yeah,
on
yeah.
at least going towards the purchase of another police car,
There's only
because
one.
there's only two right now. So
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Boink is here. Boink, thanks for showing up, buddy. Popcorn break. I think that was when you left, or maybe when I left. I was grabbing a wine. Oh yeah, so this is the wine. Wine and steak. That's Argentina. Yes, that was when I was grabbing wine.
there you go.
Carlos says, here in Peru, when a community feels and sees an uptick in crime and police is not doing a good job, it's common to call TV news for denouncing the situation. The organized neighborhood could deter. Yeah, that's a good good feedback, Carlos. But the thing is, Carlos, the fact that as foreigners, I guess with Graf being that he's an actual citizen is different, but for most expats that don't have citizenship, it's like calling and making a big deal, like starting a big drama as a foreigner. I think you can see how maybe it has its kind of negative results or negative things that could come out of it. So like you could be shown as like not enjoying or not understanding the cultural aspect of the place. What do you think about this Graph? Like have you heard of this
Well,
happening in Ecuador?
I can. They governments, whether it's on a country level, in Ecuador more on a state city level, they don't like bad publicity. So if you go to the media with an issue or concern you have, start putting stuff on social media, get some kind of campaign like that going. you're probably going to get a response of some sort from the local government that it's directed at, whether, be poor police response, and uptick in crime. Um, the type of response, well, that's kind of unknown, but for sure they do not like bad publicity. Even here in Ecuador, um, how they approach that and deal with it. It's probably, my guess is probably not going to end the way you want it to. You're not going to get the results you want, but at least you're making them aware and those officials aware of what the community is, concerned about and what's going on. So it's not a bad thing. It's definitely a tool to use to bring awareness to, government officials. So.
But do you think being strictly a temporary resident, for example, for
Oh,
being a non-citizen, that kind of has maybe some negative implications? Perhaps the local people will see it as maybe you
oh,
not really understanding the average person's typical life there.
right. I mean, you're definitely viewed as an outsider, and you may not be taken as seriously. It may be a little pushback. Hey, look, this is the way things are done here. Mind your own business. There could be some of that for sure. Um, I personally haven't encountered any of that. Ecuadorians are overall very, very friendly people and try to accommodate you. So, but I can definitely see where that could be a concern. So.
I think perhaps what I'm more thinking about when I mention this is because when you're involved in these expat groups on Facebook, I think they're sometimes pretty toxic. So they're, if someone's
Yeah,
if someone's trying to just bring up a certain reality, for example, what we're doing here in the live stream is just talking about a reality of what's happening. It's not trying to say, oh, don't go to Ecuador. It's like understand what's happening. And
right.
if a local person is unhappy with, or even foreigners are unhappy with the way that you're presenting the information, they'll say just go back home if you don't like it. And that's kind of what I was kind of getting to, is that
Right.
it's kind of like a loaded situation for you to
Yeah.
have the
I
the
mean,
news come in and bring it all up on like a
right.
national scale.
You got to realize, that you're a guest in the country. They have their own ways of doing things. And, I've seen that attitude sometimes, especially online, keyboard warriors doing their thing. You don't like it, go back where you came from. And, there's, some plausibility to that. Um, you got to be able to adapt. And, I still, even though I have dual citizenship, I consider myself a guest in this country. I wasn't born and raised here. I don't know all their customs and whatnot. So I try to be respectful of the way they do things. But, you know, you, you, each person's different. No, not everybody's going to like the way things are done in Ecuador. And if you want to try to enact some change and influence the way things are done, there's a right way to go about it and a wrong way. If you're obtuse about it, then you're going about it the wrong way. But you know, you can get pushback, from locals, and especially, the snarkiest people are sometimes the expats. When you don't like it, get the hell out of here. Go back. Go buy your ticket or something. So, like you use the word toxic. A lot of these forums and pages and stuff can be, they can get a little out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, let's go back to some of these comments here. Sally was saying, no, it was referring to Ecuador currently having a higher rate of homicide than Haiti. Okay. Yeah, I think we talked about that already, right? Since the amount increases by 250 for each dependent, I think the answer will vary depending on the number of dependents.
Sorry, I had to let the kitty out.
How many cats do you have?
Oh,
You had
I don't know.
9 when I visited you in San Jacinto, wasn't it?
Yeah, we have 11. 11.
Double digits
But to
now.
clarify, yeah, maybe I'm the crazy cat guy, but I'm the crazy goat guy, crazy sheep guy. We only have one that lives inside, and she doesn't get along with the others. 11's just too many to have inside a house, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, And yeah, we're all a little crazy in some degree. So, but they're all rescues. Um, and yeah, I've tried to adopt them out over the years, but nobody wants cats here in Ecuador.
Hmm.
So we have 11 cats.
There you go. So Ein brought up something that I think is easier for the visa specialists to answer. I don't know exactly the rules on dependents with your visas. He says since the amount increases by $250 for each dependent, I think the answer will vary depending on the number of dependents. So I think you're referring to that, which Graf didn't go down with his kids, and I do have some videos about of some families that I interviewed. If you want to check that out, in the list on Ecuador, there's a couple family videos that I made where they talk about. Here's one. Teen hated the idea of leaving America to go move to Ecuador. I believe we chat about the visa for families here, and as well as this one right here. Nobody warns you about this when moving abroad. These are two videos about family-related situations and visas and whatnot. We talk about that as well there. So let's go to the next one. Sally, fortunately, Imbabura province still has a relatively low homicide rate, and homicides in Cotacachi are extremely rare.
Yep, this is true. Yeah, thank goodness, and hopefully it stays that way, and hopefully they get some of this other stuff kind of under wraps here over the coming months.
Right. Yeah. From what people say about Ecuador, it seems to be that, like Graf already mentioned, it's the it's the mafia on mafia in general, and that's really concentrated in like certain areas like Guayaquil and I think Machala, which is where one of the big ports is, and
Right.
Manta is considered that. I was in Manta myself for like a month and a half or whatever, and I loved it there. I didn't have any issues, but yeah, like if you're accidentally where some mafia action happens, that's the danger, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Ein says 1380. I guess that's 1380 is 2026, maybe the minimum income for the visa, plus plus 250 per person for the number of dependents. Yeah, I think that's how it is. Boink says, yeah, professional visa. So yeah, professional visa. If you want to look at that option, I have a video with Dan and Ruth. Oh, Dan and Ruth, what's going on here? Okay, I don't know. I guess it's not easy to show on. I'm using the actual YouTube, the studio. Anyways, that video with Dan and Ruth, where I lost it. They talk about that specific visa. So I'm just going to continue on because I'm getting kind of lost in the wrong tab. Sally, for 2026, the Ecuador retirement visa, Visa de Residencia Temporal por Jubilación, requires a guaranteed minimum monthly pension income of $14.46. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry, it's $14.46. Okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Good.
The professional visa requires the Ecuador, Carlos. Eric, in case of some countries like Peru, the pensioners visa is frozen to $1,000. Not related. Okay, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, because you're right, and that's something that kind of surprised me when I was going through the interviews and meeting people. Is that Colombia is based on the minimum salary. Ecuador, I think Bolivia is as well, or I'd have to look back at the chats I had. But yeah, for people that are watching that are interested in getting the pensioner visa, the retiree visa, I call it. Peru has a fixed one. Panama might as well. Panama seems to be one of the easy places to retire to as well. That don't have kind of more complicated changing policies like Colombia and other places. Boink says for the professional visa, you need a real university degree. Yeah, so the video that I was trying to show you guys, let's see if I can get that up actually on my channel. That should be easier to show you instead of showing it from my studio, because the studio is complicated, I think. Where is it? So anyways, for people that haven't checked out my channel recently, I made a bunch of new playlists to try and help people like get specifically what they're looking for. And I have I made a new playlist, Retired Americans in Latam. And then we have LGBTQ community abroad, families living abroad. People are asking me to make these, and yeah, it looks like people are watching this one quite a bit. Families abroad, so that's cool. Bolivia, I'm posting a lot of new videos there. So yeah, with Ecuador, view playlist. You can go to the playlist. You can watch all the videos that I've made in the country. And this is the Ruth and Dan one that I was mentioning, that they show you the apartment, and they also got the professional visa. If you want to see their story about doing that, I actually posted the full chat as well, so you can see the super in-depth information there. And yeah, so there's 2 videos with them. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to bring up. Peru offers a great deal, just $1,000 a month, minimum requirement, right? So that's a really good option for people that are interested in getting that specific visa, and they're not, they're worried that maybe their amount of Social Security or whatever pension income won't be enough. In Peru,
Right.
it is true that the amount is fixed at $1,000 per month, but if you have dependents such as a spouse or children, you need to provide proof of an additional $500. Okay, so that's double what Ecuador requires. So yeah, that's something to take into consideration if you're coming down with your family. Okay, hold on. Here we have Ein again. Therefore, it is necessary to know that in Peru as well, the required pension amount varies depending on the number. Yeah, so if you're coming down as a family, yeah, that's definitely is going to change things quite a bit. Here we have JRS. Hello, JRS. Welcome to the chat.
Thanks for joining, JR.
Yeah, welcome to the chat. Me and Graf again, just hitting it hard. He says, I am thinking about visiting and potentially moving there, so this concerns me. So, JRS, if you have just joined us, Graf, can you just give us a summary of what we've been talking about, just in a couple sentences?
Yeah, sure. So, living here in Cotacachi, not quite a year and a half now. Within the past, 10 months to a year, there's been an uptick in crime here, primarily directed at expats, unfortunately. There's been some home invasions, a lot of just, break-ins into, bodegas, outdoor sheds, those types of things. So, it's concerning to all of the expats here, since the pattern seems to be increasing and targeting expats.
So, Graf, before we continue with the comments, I actually wanted to ask you if you were okay with sharing if you personally knew or know anyone that was affected and what happened in their situation.
Yeah, we know 2 couples that their homes were invaded in the middle of the night while they were sleeping. One couple, the wife was tied up to a chair in the bathroom. They held a machete to her throat. Her husband, he was, if I recall, beaten with, pistol whipped, basically. Both survived, with not too serious injuries, physically. And if I recall, there were 5 or 6 of these people that invaded their home and just trashed the home, looking for stuff. And they got away with quite a bit and some cash. And yeah, and that was probably about 2 months ago now. And in one of the nicer gated communities, here in town. So very concerning, very dangerous situation. And I can't imagine the emotional trauma of going through something like that. I just, something like that, if that happened to my wife and I would probably say, I'm done. We're out of here. We're going back. Another couple we know, we're friends with, especially from the farmers market here. They had a home invasion. They had a dog. They're huge dog lovers, animal lovers, like myself. And I believe there were 3 people during that event. They beat to death their dog that was outside before entering the house, and didn't accost the owners, but stole car keys, passports, money, things of that nature. So again, quite concerning, and on an emotional level, I don't know how you would cope with something like that. So, and those both those incidents have been within past 2.5 months.
So, Graf, talking about those situations and how kind of intense and kind of scary they are. What are the top three things that expats should be doing to protect themselves? I mean, we talked a bit about it already, but what do you think are the most effective ways to
Well,
deal with it?
for one, I touched on this a little bit ago earlier in the conversation. Don't let people into your house that you don't know or don't trust. Gardeners, cleaners, whoever, somebody coming to fix your oven or something. Don't do it. Stick with trusted people. Only let them onto your property and into your house, because you just don't know. Again, I'm not trying to portray, most of the service workers out there as bad people that are gonna come back and get you or something, but you don't know. The majority of them, I'm sure, are just fine, good, hardworking, friendly people, but you don't know who they're talking to. They may talk to a neighbor. Hey, I was at this expat's house. They have this and that. Oh, they had a nice TV, and you just don't know. So it's better just to be safe, and just if you have somebody that comes cleans your house, does your gardens, whatever. Make sure it's referred to you by somebody else that has had good experience and time spent with this person. So that's a big one there. Um, don't post online that you're going to be out of town, or hey, I'm going on a cruise, or simple stuff like that. Don't advertise that your home is going to be empty. It's going to be vacant for a period of time. Um, the bad guys are watching some of these pages, on social media. They monitor this stuff. So, be leery of that. Um, Situational awareness in general. I preach this a lot to people, and this applies to anywhere you are on the planet where there's people, and just, that kind of thing. So just be aware of your surroundings. If you're at the bank withdrawing money, especially if it's a large sum of money, be aware of who's around you. Be aware of who's outside, maybe across the park in a bench watching you. Those types. Even at the ATM. Just practice good situational awareness. I can't stress that enough. Be aware of your surroundings. Know who's around you. If have a plan. Have an exit strategy if someone's coming at you on the street. So things like that. Those are the big three. Of course, there's a multitude of other things you can do, and from a security standpoint on your house, there's things you can do that are deterrents, but if they want in, they're going to find a way in.
So, Graf, do you have any advice for someone if they're planning to move down and they're looking for a
Well,
property? Are there any like specific type of property features they should look for that would be good for protecting them in this type of situation?
I would like to be able to say, well, make sure it's a property that has nice tall walls around it, but they climbed right over mine. They've busted through walls in some of the other gated communities. I mean, literally took a sledgehammer and broke through the walls. So, a nice big high wall around the property, not so much. They just bring a ladder and climb over and pull the ladder and use it to leave. Um, I would, after what's been going on and our break-in last fall that we had here, I would say the more safer homes are going to be in town, in the center of town, and not in these gated communities. And I mean, we love our gated community, don't get me wrong, but it's a target right now with this uptick in crime. It seems that the homes in town, Centro and along the Leather Street, Diez de Agosto, and whatnot, have been more immune to this rash of crime that we're experiencing right now. So I would probably suggest something in town, and that comes with pros and cons too. So
Hmm. Yeah, those are Those are good suggestions because, yeah, if you're not boots on the ground, you don't really know exactly where to be able to avoid all this stuff, and
Right.
those are maybe things people wouldn't think about. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
that.
a lot of people want to live in the country like us and have animals and this and that, but when you get into the countryside a little bit, that comes with some risks. Response time from emergency personnel. You're more isolated. Those types of things. So, in town, well, okay, you're probably gonna have more noise and foot traffic, but you're probably gonna be more immune to break-ins. So.
Hmm. So, it, remember we're talking specifically about Cotacachi. This is not like an overall in all of Ecuador. For example, in Cuenca, I've been talking to my contacts in Cuenca, and they said, yeah, perhaps the crime has increased, but it's not anywhere near the level that's happening in Cotacachi, where Graph is now.
Right. Yeah. So this is coda specific,
Mm-hmm.
as you can say.
Okay. Sally says, "OMG, 11 cats." She didn't realize you were a
Yeah,
cat man.
I'm the crazy cat guy, I guess,
Sa-
and I love them all. They're part of the family now. I have a big heart, I guess, for animals in general. Our three dogs are all rescues. The cats all are. The goats and sheep, not so much. I don't know. I like to think maybe I have provided a very nice home for them, and they're treated. All the animals here are treated quite well.
yeah,
So,
people.
but thank you. Yes, and I appreciate the comment, Sally.
Uh, Sally says, "Thank you for having a big heart for the rescue animals." Graph, dog,
Thank you.
cat, sheep, goat, pig, llama.
Uh, yeah.
No llama yet, right?
Well, I would love to have one or an alpaca, and you got to have two. You can't just have one. They're herd animals. I just don't have the room,
Yeah,
so
they're big ones. Yeah.
they're big. They require a lot of
Uh,
space.
Boink says, "I love kitty cats too." Yeah, me too.
All right,
Love the
there
cats.
you go.
Yeah, we all love the cats here. I grew up with cats. Carlos, good point. Some years ago, a solo travel female from Belgium get lost in Coco Canyon. So I actually went to Coco Canyon with Natalie. We rode there, and it was in the middle of winter. It was crazy, crazy, crazy cold. And our TV news was following the situation during months. Our TV journalism is proactive helping. So yeah, that's good. It's good that
Nice.
the Peruvian media really helps people out. Here we have using drones is a cartel strategy, and thank you for that, Tani. Appreciate that. Tani, yeah. Panama's amount is fixed, not based on changing minimum wage like Colombia. So we have Panama and Peru. Yeah. I have to look into
Okay.
Bolivia again on my videos. I can't remember exactly. I've done so many, so many visa videos with people. I kind of get them mixed up sometimes in my head. Tani says, yeah, that definitely sounds like cartels. A normal burglar isn't going to harm an animal because they just want to get out quickly. Right. So remember the
Well,
story you mentioned about
right.
the beating the
Yeah,
dog to
yeah,
death.
right. Yes, yes. Um, well, again, I hope I didn't misspeak. I don't think these are normal burglars. I think it's an organized group of some sort, pardon me. Um, is it cartel, narco stuff? I don't know, but I think it's definitely some kind of criminal gang that's operating here in the area, and they are specifically focusing on Cotacachi because we have a good number of expats here, a lot more than Ibarra to the north, Otavalo, for example. So we've got a pretty strong concentration of them here in Cota. So, but I definitely, yeah, these aren't normal burglars. They're definitely organized and a group of some sort. So.
JRS says, are multi-story condos in Quito being broken into, typically when people aren't home?
I can't speak for, well, I mean, we have a flat in Centro Histórico of Quito. It's in a very secure building, but we've never had issues there. But, Quito is, I think, almost 3 million people. I'm sure, I'm sure something's going on there, but I can't really honestly speak for, what kind of incidents are happening there as far as break-ins to condos. Like any city on this planet, there's good and bad parts of towns. There's areas that are targets. and so on. So, but I can't really dive into any specifics on that.
But in your flat in downtown Quito, that the type of burglary situation is in Cotacachi is not really as common. It's not a thing you're noticing in Quito as much.
Well, again, a city of 3 million people almost. That's a lot of square
Right,
footage
but what I
there.
mean is
A lot of
with the other
but
with the expat community there, you haven't noticed much
so
chatter.
I, I haven't heard any chatter in the Quito area. So.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like Quito is massive; it's like a million
Oh
times
yeah,
bigger than Cotacachi. But there's the expat. I'm not sure how involved you are with the expat Facebook groups and whatnot, and maybe if they're
a
chatting or
little bit, and
WhatsApp groups. I'm
yeah,
not sure.
yeah. I mean, I'm in some groups there, some expat groups there that are Quito specific, and I have some friends there, and I'm not hearing a lot of activity in regards to crime and expats being targeted in those groups. And I have a good friend there that's pretty in tune with crime and incidents like that in the Quito area and in Ecuador in general. And he usually fills me in if there's something going on or a pattern, an uptick in something. So I think at this point, again, just focusing on expats between Cota and Quito, we're having more issues here in Cotacachi right now.
Right.
So.
So if we were to kind of summarize it, it would be like per capita, Cotacachi is definitely getting kind of knocked out of the water, whereas
Yeah,
per capita in Quito, of course, it's just huge city
right.
and it's not the same level at all.
Then you narrow that down to expats only, filter it down to that. So yeah, per capita kind of thing. Yeah.
There's way more expats in Quito compared to Cotacachi, I'm assuming, right?
Well, I'm not sure. It's a good question, Eric.
Yeah.
But I think there's 1,100 here in the Cota area, surrounding areas. Quito, I mean, I'd be very surprised if it's the same or less than Cotacachi. I mean, with 3 million people, it's probably, quite a bit higher, I would guess. So.
Right. Next comment was back from Ein. What I fear is that these terrible things might not end as temporary misfortunes, but could become the norm. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a valid statement. We certainly don't want them to become the norm. Lately it seems that way, but um, it's just hard to tell what the future holds right now. Again, just speaking on what's happening here in Cotacachi, I hope they, get to the bottom of some of this. But honestly, I'm not real optimistic right now. I don't see that they're being overly aggressive at tackling this problem. Again, most of this is focused on expats. I think the situation would be different if it was more community, if it was being directed at Ecuadorians and indigenous people as well, spread out more across the population. But I'm sure they're concerned. I'm sure they want to help. Their hearts are probably in the right place as far in regards to law enforcement. But we make up a small percentage of the population here, and resources are very, very limited throughout the country. Financially, as well as hardware. As I mentioned earlier, 2 squad cars for this town. That's just not a real good situation. So.
And for people that weren't watching before, you mentioned that there has been people that you talked to said there's been waves of criminal
Correct.
activity, that it's not been kind of flat. It's been up and down
Right.
over time.
Yeah. So, our hope is right now is that we're at a high point of this wave pattern, and it'll drop off, hopefully soon. But it's hard to say. There's a lot of issues in the country right now, unfortunately, and excuse me, all of those can be interconnected. So.
So we have another comment here from Carlos. That kind of violent crime that seen to be coming from ex-narcos. It is not the common burglary seen over here. So it seems like Carlos from Peru is also he's feeling the same thing as, I think it was her name, Tani. Yeah, Tani mentioned that. So Yeah,
Yes.
using
Yeah.
drones as cartel She says that's cartel strategy. So
Yeah.
that's
Definitely, for sure, it is. Whether that's the case here, I mean, these drones, you can go get them anywhere. They're cheap. They're easy to use anymore. So they're so accessible to anybody. So it could be a cartel. I mean, it's definitely a cartel strategy. Whether it's cartels, ex-narcos using them, I'm not too convinced of that yet. I hope it's not, but rather I think it's more of a more local, organized criminal gang.
mm. So, Graf, now that we've gone through the comments,
Sure.
I want to go on to another part of the safety aspect in Ecuador, and
Okay.
that is going to be about the U.S. military involvement. And
Okay.
so, when I was there recently, I went to Manta, which is where the U.S. military base uh,
Used to be,
used
right?
to be
Yeah.
and used to work from, and it was inactive when I was there. There was no one there, but it seems like the was Noboa is the president, right? He
Uh-huh. Yep.
has already brought in the U.S. help from abroad into that Manta base. Can you talk a bit about what is happening with in regards to this U.S. influence in Ecuador?
Right. Well, again, I'm not an expert on this at all. I just, I see the news articles. I do some of my own, basic research. But Naboa signed an agreement with the U.S. Administration for to help combat the narco problem here in the country, and that involvement, that U.S. involvement, is consists of um, primarily hardware, physical hardware to combat the narcos, intelligence. There are military advisors, here in country right now. They did just recently open up an FBI office in Quito to help assist with, combating the cartel problem here. Um, so I guess you could say, there are boots on the ground. Are they actively out there fighting and fighting cartel, bad guys and stuff? I don't think so. I think right now it's more of an advisory role that they're playing, and it's pretty minimal. I think the biggest thing is the hardware that Ecuador has received from the United States, and intelligence. So intelligence sharing.
So, Graf, have you noticed any visible changes? Have you from the chatter from the groups you're on? Have they noticed any visible changes since they have arrived?
None at all. And again, these hot spots of cartel activity are concentrated on the coast. There's a little bit here in the Sierra, little pockets here and there up towards the Colombian border. So, we're not seeing a lot here up in the Sierra. On the coast, I would imagine you would probably visibly see more activity, maybe helicopters flying by, army trucks, that kind of thing. But uh, you know, we did. I guess we did see a military helicopter fly over yesterday. Um, that's about the only sign I've seen of anything. I don't even know if that was just a routine drill, or if they were headed somewhere to do something. Um, but these operations that they're conducting, you would know they're happening.
So,
So
Graf,
and I imagine the same can be said on the coast too, unless you're in Manta and you see a ship coming in, or bringing a narco submarine in full of cocaine or something. Um, for the most part, these operations aren't visible. So.
uh, one thing I was seeing when I'm following the headlines is that it seemed like the public was against it, but it still went
Mhm.
through as something um, that the president Noboa, which people are criticizing him being a dual citizen like you, that he has
Right, right.
interests in working with the U.S. government. And is this a
Sure.
controversial thing that's happening there? And what is the perspective of the expats that you know, and its influence where you are in Ecuador?
Well, I think I would probably go out on a branch and say, the majority of expats are against, the relationship between the U.S. and NABOA here, and the help that they're providing the country. And I think a lot of that is because of the current administration in the U.S. and their opinions towards that administration. So, they're against it. Of course, not all of them. There's some that I know personally that are for it, for the help that Ecuador is receiving to combat this problem. But a lot are, against it. And I can understand their viewpoint, their opinion. The U.S. hasn't always had a really stellar, a track record with helping Latin American countries in the past. There's been quite a few speed bumps. So, their concerns, I think, are valid. But the other side of it is Ecuador needs help. They need help combating these cartels and these narcos. Financially, from a hardware standpoint, training, all of these things, they can't do it on their own. I mean, these cartels have been around for decades here in the country. They're not going to go away in a year. They're not going to go away during Noboa's administration here, during his term. So Ecuador needs all the help they can get from whoever they can get at this point. In my opinion, again, this is my outlook on it, and I don't see anybody else coming to help the country right now, to combat this problem. So I personally welcome the help. I think it's a good thing. And I know a lot of you are going to disagree with that, but and you're entitled to that, just as I'm entitled to agree with the assistance that the country is receiving. So I don't know how else they'll do it. So
let's go back to some of the comments. People have been bringing up some opinions about this situation. So clip it Terminator, Noboa needs to go, he bad.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
a lot of people.
That's your opinion. You're entitled to that.
A lot of people are against Noboa. I understand I think for me, seeing that he is, dual citizen, I think that kind of raises some red flags just for me personally.
Sure. Well,
like when you're not like just a one citizenship type of person, like it seems like there could be some influence regarding that.
Right. And I think a lot of it is, his relationship with the current administration in the States. And okay, what really bothers you about Noboa has to go? Is it because of his relationship and ties to the current administration, or is it something different? I'm just wondering if people's dislike of the current president there in the U.S. is affecting how they feel about the president here. I don't know. Again, this is just all speculation, and everybody's entitled to their opinions. So
we have Michael El Salvador Bull. The FBI and the USA will deal the drugs. So
again, you're entitled to that. Whatever. I disagree, but hey, more power to you. So
I think
thanks for commenting.
Perhaps what he's referring to is, I'm not sure how valid these stories are, but there was some incidents with the during the period of Pablo Escobar and Colombia and the drug trade that was going up through Nicaragua. There were some issues with some facts about the U.S. being involved in the trade or not, and then also with Afghanistan, with them possibly being involved with the poppy seed plantations. I mean, I don't know how valid those are, but perhaps he's referring to those.
I have no doubt, the FBI, CIA, they've done some dirty stuff over the years. I have no doubt about that. Whether that's the case here, I don't know. I tend to not believe that, but it's certainly possible. But
here,
what other solutions are there to combat this problem right now?
Yeah.
So you always present that problem, that question to people. Okay, you don't like Noboa's alliance with the U.S. and receiving help. Okay, that's great. That's fine. What is your solution to combat the narcos that are taking over the country? I mean, you Google Ecuador right now. You Google, is Ecuador a narco state? It's kind of in a gray area, So to those people who disagree with this alliance, this agreement we have right now with the U.S., okay, what's your solution? You know, come up with a good solution that doesn't involve the U.S. And hey, let's get it done. Let's get rid of these narcos that are making life hell for everybody here in the country. So not just expats, but mostly the hardworking Ecuadorians are the ones suffering. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with your idea of getting some help
You need something.
could be better than getting none. I mean, I think a lot of the people are just kind of questioning what kind of help are they actually providing, and if it's actually doing
Right.
anything,
Sure.
or if it's for the
And those are
benefit of the
valid
people or
questions.
not.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
I think if you can curtail and knock out the narco cartel problem, that's going to improve the life for everybody in this country. Whether you agree with the U.S. helping or another country, yes, someone needs to jump in and help Ecuador,
Right.
because they can't do it on their own.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ein says, however, one of the byproducts of that outcome requires thorough preparation. There is a possibility that crimes against the general public could significantly increase if cartel remnants move to inland cities and towns that have been considered safe until now. I guess maybe he's even talking about Cotacachi, right?
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility.
I
Yeah.
just hope that the terrible things that happened in Cotacachi and Vilcabamba are not a prelude to that. Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah. Well, it's I've said this before to other people, as the cartels are taken down, those members don't just disappear. They're going to look for other work. They need work, and they're going to stick with what they know how to do, and they're going to look for other opportunities in other spots that are soft targets. So that's a very valid question and comment there, Ein 8912, and definitely a concern. So.
Ein says, but I might be making too much of a fuss. No, I think you're just raising up your ideas.
No, you're doing great, and you got some solid comments there. Appreciate that.
Carlos says, for our own security and peace of mind, whatever help Ecuador receives from abroad is welcome. Our borders are permeable, they're narcos in Ecuador is also a threat for us.
Yeah,
true. It's
definitely
having that border in the south with Peru and Peru's northern border. Yeah, you have to.
It's a trickle effect, and you got porous borders, and they just walk on through. Basically, it's definitely a regional issue. Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and like I said, hopefully we can get this thing tackled and under control.
So, let's go back. That was the wrong one. Sorry. So Graf, let's get down to the meat and potatoes, the big picture of this entire situation, because we're not here to just try and make people scared or worried or whatever. It's just kind of getting the update on, not all of Ecuador, of course, like I mentioned it since the beginning. This is a Cotacachi, kind of that area specific event.
Correct.
And so let's kind of think about Cotacachi specifically. If someone is thinking about retiring in Ecuador, would you still recommend Cotacachi, or what would you tell them?
Good question. And I've been thinking about that one off and on for the past few days. I think it depends on the person. It depends on what you can tolerate, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to trade off, so to say. Are you willing to trade off that nice suburb outside Kansas City, for example, and everything's nice, pristine, and clean, and you feel you have this nice sense of security and safety? You don't have bars on your windows. Yeah, you probably have an alarm system, but are you willing to trade that for an incredible country with amazing people. The cost of living is just unbelievably affordable. So I think, that's difficult. It's Yeah, it just kind of depends on what you're willing to sacrifice, and maybe that's too strong of a word. Um, you move here, say to Cotacachi, and this is an amazing town. It really is. We still love it. Are you willing to sacrifice, some of these things and comforts and security comforts in the U.S. for the possibility that you're gonna, your bodega is gonna be broken into? They're gonna steal your e-bike, or they're gonna, maybe, worst case scenario, break into your house while you're there, tie you up. Those are things and risks that you need to really think about for yourself. We've been talking here for 2 hours or so about the security issues here in Cotacachi. Again, there's 11 or 1,200 people. The odds that something are going to happen to you are still pretty minimal. It's not like out of those 1,200 people, we just going to use that number, 1,000 of us have been victimized by some type of crime. It's not at all. It's not, not close to that. But again, you compare what it used to be like compared to what's happening now, and you look at the pattern that's evolving over this past year, 10 months to a year. You do have to look at those things. You have to consider, okay, there's a possibility that I'm going to be broken into, possibly worse. There's things I can do. There's, preventative measures, but they can typically get through those things, the robbers. So, would I recommend moving here still? If I were to do it, if I were in the States right now, I'm getting ready to retire, and I've done my, exploratory trips to Cotacachi and done all my research, and I know about the break-ins and this uptick in crime here, and how it's affected the community, the expat community more specifically, I would probably still move here. I would say I would still move here, but you need to go into it. I would go into it, using myself as an example, knowing that I'm going to have to take certain precautions. I'm going to have to implement certain measures of security around my house. I'm going to have, you see behind me, bars on my windows, those types of things to help minimize the possibility that I'm going to become a victim. If you're okay with that, then come on down. It's still, we love Cotacachi, and we have lots of friends here, and it's an amazing city. The weather is just absolutely incredible year round. It's eternal spring, as I've said in some of your other videos. So there's so many other positive things to look at in the community here. But on the same hand, you can't ignore this uptick in the crime and the security situation. But you kind of have to be prepared for it. And and I'll also comment real quick, if you've never been the victim of any kind of crime, then the first time it happens to you, regardless of what type, even if your shed is broken into, you're going to feel violated. Emotionally, it's going to shatter a lot of things that you felt or you were secure and that kind of thing. For me personally, I've been the victim of break-ins and crimes for about 35 years, most of my life, the majority of those in the US. So, for example, when our bodega was broken into last fall, I went out there and the gate was open, the bike's gone, everything's kind of a mess. I was kind of numb to it because it has happened to me personally so many times in my life. Right now, honestly, I'm kind of waiting for the next event to happen to me personally. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't happen. But my personal pattern throughout my life is that it's going to happen again to me. What type, when, where, I have no idea, of course. So those are things to think of too. The first time being the victim of a crime, and obviously the more severe it is, the more impact it's going to have on you psychologically. that's going to really upend your world for quite a while. So, that's something to think about too. I'm kind of rambling on there, but I hope that makes sense.
Graph.
But I would still, short answer, I would still move to Cotacachi. Um, Knowing what's going on, I would just be prepared accordingly, both, from a hardware standpoint, with security and, emotionally, psychologically.
Mm. Graph, I'm curious, have you personally, you and Janet, reconsidered staying there due to these recent events?
Yes. Uh-huh. We've passed, well, I would say starting last October when we had the break-in here and then some of the home invasions, we've seriously thought about moving back to the U.S. two different times. One fairly recently, last month, when our friends, when were broken into and she was tied up, machete at her throat and everything. We thought about, okay, we're kind of done here. We started, scouting out places. Okay, where do we go in the U.S.? We could go anywhere. What's got a good climate? What's housing costs? Looking at all of those things. And maybe that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to what happened to our friends, but it was something we seriously consider. I was talking to realtors and family members about this and that, that live in different cities we were interested in. I think I even mentioned it to you, Eric, once. So, but ultimately, we decided we're going to stay put for now. The pros about living in Ecuador and Cotacachi, more specifically, outweigh the cons about living here right now. I'm willing to, take the risk, so to say, of another potential break-in. And, moving back to the U.S., I mean, we could do that, but man, it's so darn expensive anymore. I'd have to go back to work, so which I'm not opposed to, but it would be a dramatic lifestyle change. I wouldn't be able to take 11 cats, 6 goats, 3 sheep, and chickens, and all the dogs. So, you have to look at all of those types of things. My wife and I were talking just before the interview here that if for some, if God forbid, we had a home invasion and we were held at gunpoint, knife point, whatever, that would be the red line for us. That would be, okay, we're done. We're going back. So, break-ins, I can cope with that fairly well. Again, I have security measures in place. I do own a firearm. Hopefully I never have to use that again. But I do have means to protect myself to some extent. Nothing's ever perfect. I can't go up against 6 guys with guns, and I'm just, so I'm probably more, I have the means to protect myself than most expats here. But, so, again, the trade-off, the pros about living here in Cotacachi outweigh that possibility that we're going to get broken into again.
So you mentioned being robbed and having issues in the U.S. I think, spent
I could write a book.
You spent most of your time in Kansas, right? So,
Correct.
do you feel that where you're living in, or you've been living in three main places there in Ecuador, right? The San Jacinto, Quito, and Cotacachi. Do you think those places that you've been living in Ecuador are safer than where you lived in the U.S.? How do you kind of rate them?
Well, and that term safe and feeling safe, that's, that's kind of an odd phrase. Nowhere is perfectly safe. My business, I'll just use that as an example, that I had in Kansas City, was in a very good part of town. And, I was broken into multiple times. And the police station was, about 5 blocks away. I had security cameras, alarms. They would still break in and steal cars, drive through the garage doors, all kinds of stuff. So, safety, that's kind of almost an imaginary idea. We lived in a nice part of town, a nice suburb of Kansas City, and, we had issues there too. So, if you look at the incidents I had in the U.S., all these, break-ins and whatnot that I experienced in the U.S. compared to what I have experienced here, I would say here is safer. But you got to look at the time I've spent here. I've only been in Ecuador about, almost 5 years now. I lived in the States, all my life. So, you fast forward another 35 years here, my time here in Ecuador, if I'm still around. Okay, then you can make maybe a more fair comparison. How many times was Graf the victim of a crime in Ecuador over the course of 40 years versus the 40 years he spent in the U.S.? But that's down the road a long ways, obviously. But if you look at the numbers, again, this is just me personally and what I've experienced. If you look at the numbers as they sit now, I'm safer here. I've had fewer incidents of being a victim of a crime here in Ecuador, so-called borderline narco state, than I did in nice suburbs and everything in Kansas City and other parts of the U.S. that I lived
in. So.
And I'm sorry, can I take a quick break again?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I'm sorry, I'll be right back.
And while he's doing that, guys, I'm going to show you that if you want to check out my videos without having any of the ads from YouTube, I also have Patreon. I post all my videos on Patreon with no ads. So, for example, if you become a member there, you can watch all the videos ad-free. And that's another option for showing your support for the channel. All the videos are there. Sometimes the thumbnails are slightly different, but overall, it's they're the same videos I put out there, and you are showing your support if you like the channel and you want to join and show me that you enjoy all the work that I'm doing. Patreon, besides the YouTube membership. YouTube membership. For people that are doing that, I appreciate it, and thank you so much if you're already part of the community, if you're a member already. And I ask you also to please become a member on the desktop, because if you become a member on the if you're on your phone, they share part of that membership with, I think, with Apple and with those extra third-party people. So if you do it on the desktop, a bigger part goes to me and Google. So just for people that are already a member, if you wanted to join on the desktop, that is a little bit better just for creators like me. If you don't know, that's just one of the things that happen. Is that the phone companies like Apple, for example, they get involved in the process, and then they take their cut. They're the mafia taking their cut. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up for anyone that is a member or wants to be a member. I appreciate it if you already are, or if you're thinking about it. Definitely, it's helpful to show your support for the channel. Carlos, we have 2 extra comments here. Graf. And I think we can go through these. And
sorry about that.
No, relax, all good. I mean, we are just doing a chat here, no rush. So Ein says, it is not yet a level that warrants a huge fuss, but it seems necessary to continue keeping a close eye on matters related to public security. So yeah,
a level that warrants a huge fuss, but it seems okay.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I mean. Public security, maybe more specifically law enforcement in general. One, they're not going to be there when you need them. Again, I'm very pro law enforcement. They do what they can, but you can't count on them. You can't rely on them. The odds of a policeman catching the bad guy in the act are slim to none. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. And I have many stories that I could sit here and ramble on about relating to that. So I think it's important for everybody to be responsible for their own security. on a personal level and with their property. I think that's very important because you can't rely on the police to help you out in a severe situation. My wife and I have been reevaluating our security here at the house, and conversing with some other people in the community, expat community here. We're going to build a safe room in our house, and we have a spot picked out just in the slight chance that somebody does break in. We can get into that safe room. We can hit that little remote for the community siren. I can dial the police, to get over here. And, obviously I'll have some other means to protect myself. But so, the point of that is you have to be responsible for your own security. You have to, evaluate your house, look at what the weak points are, have a plan. What am I going to do if somebody starts crawling through that bedroom window? What am I going to do if I see somebody outside the window and in my yard crawling over a fence? Have a plan, and don't wait till after it happens. Do it now, and then hope that you never have to implement it. So.
We have another comment from Carlos. He mentions, what about hiring your personal security staff, like your own staff, as you are a community with economic resources, could eventually hire ex-police with permit to use guns? Just thinking out loud.
Yep. I mean, good idea. Very valid idea. The issue with that, and here's a specific real-world example. One of the gated communities here last year, there was a home invasion, and the night, and it's a really high and probably the highest end gated community here for expats in the area. They had night security, 24-hour, 24/7 security. They were paid off to leave, and the bad guys came in. So. There's that possibility as well. Money talks for a lot of these people. And just because you're a security guard with a gun doesn't mean you're going to turn down, maybe a $500 bribe to go take an extended lunch. So that's something you have to be aware of as a possibility that could happen if you have a security force. And there's pros and cons to having one of those too. If we had a security guard here in our gated community, what's he going to do? Just, walk up and down the street at night, and, what's he going to do if he encounters somebody? You have a shootout, so there's a lot to that. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. Anything you can do that's a preventative measure to stop the bad guy, or not stop, to slow down the bad guys is what I'm trying to say, to slow them down. Anything you can do, is going to be beneficial. Layers, you have to have layers of security, and we have that here. Other expats are starting to do that. So that's important to keep in mind as well.
Okay, we have another comment from Carlos. Here in Peru, if a police shuts down a criminal, I guess catches them, is congratulated by the authorities. The government needs to motivate the police to do a good job. Yes,
definitely. They need to, be rewarded in some fashion, praise and award, something. Give them an incentive to get out there and get the bad guys, because they're out there, obviously. And again, not just Ecuador, there's issues everywhere. So, give them an incentive to go above and beyond. So, and they got a tough job to begin with. So.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment here from 777 Yashobim of Christ. What's happening here? So I think he's coming in just recently. So we're kind of at the end of our chat, but if you can give him just the summary of what we've been chatting about for the past couple hours, just to give everyone up to speed. We have Natalie. Natalie's here. She just woke up in Shanghai, China.
Hey.
Hello, Graf.
Hey, Natalie. How are you?
Hello, Natalie. Natalie and I went to go visit Graf in San Jacinto before we moved to the mountains, and now she's in China for a little while. So she's
oh my goodness,
she's in Shanghai.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So she's
that's why she's just waking up.
Just waking up now. Yep. It's 9:40 in the morning there. Yep. So hello.
Okay. Hope you're doing well, Natalie.
So yeah, tell us. Just give us a bit more of another quick summary for 777 Yashobim Christ.
So we've been discussing an uptick in the security issues here in Cotacachi, Ecuador. There's been an uptick in crime that's been kind of a combination of home invasions and just so to say normal break-ins where they just steal belongings. Some of these home invasions, expats have been subdued, tied up, and whatnot, threatened, and houses ransacked, and that type of thing, unfortunately. And so we've been discussing some of the things associated with this uptick in crime here in Cotacachi, as well as U.S. Involvement with the Ecuadorian military in combating the narco problem here in the country as well. So,
So I think we have gone through most of the questions I had
I think so.
for you. Let's see if I have anything else for you that we can maybe. Can you think of any last comments or things to mention before we finish up here?
I just, I hope, for those watching this and have watched it and commenting or thinking of moving here to Ecuador, please don't become overly alarmed. I'm not trying to scare people and, fear factor stuff and drive people away. Every individual, moving here, thinking of moving here, you need to do your own research and you need to figure out what your tolerance levels are for certain things. Again, pros and cons to leaving wherever you're coming from to moving here and with what's going on here. I've just been trying to present the reality of what's going on here in Cotacachi right now. That doesn't mean that I'm not telling you, don't move here. It's unsafe. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying you need to think for yourself, do your own research, come visit, talk to people, all of those things. And what's right for one person may not be right for somebody else. Everybody has their own limits and what they're willing to put up with. Yes, right now it's a little bit of an issue here. We've had some concerning events. Hopefully it's just a short-lived pattern that's going to taper off here in the next few months. Time will tell. But it's, I can't stress enough that Cotacachi and Ecuador, for that matter, is an amazing country with so much to offer, so many friendly people. It's absolutely incredible. And if you don't decide to move here, come visit. I mean, at least come visit. There's so much to see in such a small country. I think it's about the size of Colorado, the state of Colorado. So, and very affordable, lots of good food. So if not thinking of moving here, come down, visit. I think you'll love it. You'll be safe as long as you don't want to get involved in the drug trade and try to take over narco territory. You'll be just fine.
And to get back to my very original idea and statement that I brought up, this is Cotacachi specific. I just interviewed here in Argentina, where I am now, specifically in Buenos Aires. I just interviewed a retiree that went down to go retire in Cuenca. So Cuenca is one of the main hot spots, main places where people retire in Ecuador. Yep. And they have not been seeing the same issue as what Graf is seeing. So I just wanted to bring up the fact that, when you go even to a tiny country, Ecuador is a tiny country, when you go there, things are still hyper localized, right? So like Cuenca is not the same thing as Guayaquil. It's not the same thing as Quito. It's not the same thing as Cotacachi. Right. So I had a recent live stream where I chatted about, well, when you choose a country, what's more important is when you choose the city within the country, because like when you go to a place like Mexico, even Ecuador being a tiny country, when you go from one place to another, it feels like a different country. Of course, when it comes to policies for your visa and all those things, yeah, of course, the country has a nationwide policy. But when it comes to the cultural, safety, price related type of things, those really vary pretty drastically sometimes within the country. So I just wanted to bring that up. And, Graf being only in Cotacachi, that is him just giving the specifics of where he is in, it's an expat hub, but it's also quite a unique place in the country right now.
Very much so, yes.
Right. Yep. Well, if anyone has any more questions, let us know here. I'll stay on for another minute, but I just wanted to bring up the current reality where Graf is now, and where lots of expats are retiring to northern Ecuador in the mountains. If anyone has any questions, let us know. And if you don't have any other things to bring up, we can just call it quits.
That's it, I guess. I think I've spoken enough tonight and rambled on enough. Hopefully, people benefit from this and get some decent information. I try to make it a point not to embellish and exaggerate about things. On any of your interviews, this is just me talking about my reality here in Cotacachi and what's going on with people we know around us and whatnot. So, for those out there that have been watching, really appreciate you checking in, and thanks for all the great comments. And again, hope you walk away with some good information from this.
Yeah, and for anyone else that's I noticed that some of you are living abroad, but in other countries. I want to say hi and thanks for showing up, for hanging out with us for the evening while I drink some vino and yell some questions at Grafito with with his current situation. Now, we just wanted to bring up the current reality of exactly what he just mentioned, of his situation specifically, which is not going to be the rest of Ecuador, but and just there specifically. Right. So I think it is now almost 11 p.m. here in Argentina. Oof. So it's getting kind of late. I have to work in the morning. And Graf, I want to say thank you so much for giving us the update on not only what your life has been like recently, but kind of like things to be aware of in the future.
Yeah, well, the more awareness that you can convey to people, the better off everybody is.
Yeah, that was my idea exactly. So, guys, thanks for showing up from the community. That everyone showed up to give some comments and say hi. So, have a great one, and I'll see you in the next one. So, thanks, Graf.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.